So you have the BDC or the salespeople working on their processes in the CRM, and then you have the managers working on the inventory. And so we've really kind of carved a niche to bring those two together in a vertical that will help them attack those hot spots in their inventory in a different way than they've approached prior to.
Hi, I'm Dennis McGinn, founder and CEO of vehicle reconditioning and communications company, Rapid Recon. Today, we are talking with John Anderson, the Chief Operating Officer for Lotpop. Welcome, John.
Hi, Dennis. Thanks for having me, and it's an honor to be with you. Appreciate it.
Right off the bat, what is your background? Can you kind of tell me where you've come from and what you've done in the past?
My goodness, I don't know if we have that long time together, but real quick, yes, I started out in automotive when I was 18 years old. In high school, my best friend's father was a general manager of Chevrolet store, so I actually had my for lack of better terminology, I had my taste buds wet in the automotive industry by doing detail during that time. And then when I come out of college, had an opportunity to start with a Harley Davidson shop selling motorcycles. And it just so happened that Harley Davidson shop was owned by an Oldsmobile dealer. And that was back when Harley Davidson was still owned by AMF, and their motorcycles were not as popular as they are today. So during the wintertime, they moved me up to the Oldsmobile store with the prospect of bringing me back in the summer, and the car business stuck. And so from that point forward, I spent time in sales for several years, and then moved my way into subprime financing, then into management. And then my last stint with a group in Indianapolis, Indiana, was as a general manager of a pretty large Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram store, where I actually used the product that I work for, the company I work for now, in Lotpop, and that's how it evolved to Lotpop. After I left Indianapolis, moved to Texas, Jason Rice reached out to me, and that was 7 years ago, and here I am today.
Great. That's awesome. John, tell us about Lotpop. Where does Lotpop fit into the industry today?
You know, that's we've kind of Dennis, we've really kind of paved our own path. We do some inventory management with dealers and consulting, and then we also do some lead management. So we really have kind of carved our own niche in the fact that we're really a hub where we bring both these sides together, and it's intentional because we've found that those typically in normal operations of dealerships, those two sides are pretty siloed in stores. So you have the BDC or the salespeople working on their processes in the CRM, and then you have the managers working on the inventory. And so we've really kind of carved a niche to bring those two together in a vertical that will help them attack those hot spots in their inventory in a different way than they've approached prior to.
John, tell me what you're seeing in the industry right now as things continue to change and get complicated. What insights can you share with us?
Well, overall, we've really come out of the last 2 years, Dennis, with a lot of success. Coming out of COVID, obviously with the new car, the reduction in new car inventory, and then that focus on used cars. A lot of dealers have had a lot of success over the last year and a half, 2 years. But now, as a lot of us are finding out, that market's starting to shift. And I think what we're seeing is a slow response. That's I think if I had a concern right now, that would be my concern for dealers, is that we're kind of seeing what's happening in front of our eyes, but we're still kind of relying on those last year and a half to 2 years. So that slow response has caused what we're seeing in the fact that inventories are starting to age where we haven't seen that before. And we're seeing that inventories are starting to shift up into that higher average investment. And so when you couple that with the fact that shopper counts have been historically low this year, that's something we track, and we look at shopper counts in markets, and we really never got that peak of shopper counts like we typically see this year. And inventories. Now you're starting to see new car inventories starting to climb back up, and really used car inventories have stayed pretty stable over the last 6 months to a year. So with those two combinations, lower shopper counts, plenty of inventory, customers tend to shop longer. And as a result of that, if we're not doing and getting down to doing some of the smaller fundamental things that made us successful, then that's when you start to see that shift in inventory and that shift in aging on that inventory.
What I'm really curious, what are your yardsticks that you use that resonate with your customers the best? And when you're saying, we want to help you fix things that are in your processes that aren't where you want them. How do you actually frame that into some measurements?
Well, the two primary ways that we look at it are we as a dealership, are we selling what we're stocking? So if we're stocking 100 cars, are we selling 100 cars each month? The second way is, where are we selling our inventory out of? So we're looking at percentage of inventory sold out of our fresh buckets, which would be 0 to 15 day and 16 to 30 day, because typically, as you look at inventory as it sits, right, the cost to market tends to go up as inventory sits. So our best opportunity to maximize our return on those dollars invested in an inventory is in our first 30 days. So those are really the foundation for what we do. Everything else builds off of that.
When you find that they're not turning it in 30 days, that they got to age inventory, who do you work with most closely at the dealerships, and kind of how do you get them motivated to go down that track?
Our system, our software is best when it's managed top down. So when we have dealer principals, general managers, and management all together on those Zoom calls, those are historically our best performing dealers in having that accountability, which is really what we do, is come alongside that dealer, really get on their side of the desk with them, and really help with an accountability standpoint. And the measurements we look at that can affect that is, one, are we getting our inventory online fast enough? And primarily when we're talking or working with dealers, we're really 85% of what we do is on their online dealership, right, Dennis? Because we, as things have evolved, right, we really have two dealerships now. We have our bricks and mortar side, right, which they're in the dealership. They can see physically what's happening. I've got a customer on the lot. I have customers in the showroom, or maybe I don't have customers. And then they can physically manage that. That's right in front of them. A lot of times, because of the numerous hats that a majority of dealers team wear during the day, it's the online dealership that really goes unnoticed a lot of times. And that's really where we try to focus their attention. How quickly are we getting our inventory from the time we trade for it or we purchase it to getting it fully displayed online with a price description and all the photos? Do we have any leads sitting on that inventory early on that maybe we're not contacting in a robust enough time? And that's really been an area that we've seen shift a lot here recently, right? Again, I refer back to the last couple of years, dealers were able to, because of the amount of customers that they had lining up for their inventory, maybe they were able to sit on that inventory a little bit longer because they had
Sure.
5 or 6 customers sitting on that specific vehicle. Well, now we've watched that disseminate, right? So we don't have as many customers per car. So if we're still waiting to contact those customers, and especially with as much inventory that's out there in the marketplace, that's just causing a delay in the opportunities that we have in front of us. So, getting that inventory online, contacting those customers. Do I have any leads sitting in my CRM that are still active in my CRM that are on inventory that has been sold? So a customer sent me a lead on a vehicle that we sold. Is there an opportunity for me to move that customer to another vehicle in my inventory? And what we're seeing is those customers, we're not calling those customers for 15, 18, 20 days. And I liken that, again, going back to what the analysis that I mentioned. We have our online dealership and our bricks and mortar dealership. And an analogy is, if a customer walked in your showroom floor in your bricks and mortar side and a customer waited on them, and the customer asked to see a 2020 Chevrolet Traverse, and the salesman looked at the customer and said, "I'm sorry, we sold that," and turned around and walked away from that customer, the dealer would call big time foul on that salesperson, right? That would not be something that we would expect to happen. But we're seeing it every day online, where the customer's looking for a vehicle, we've sold it, and we're just not communicating with them. So those are 3 or 4 of the biggest things that we're seeing right now, of where we just feel like dealers haven't made that shift yet overall.
Hopefully there'll be a bunch of prospective customers for you that will be listening to this. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, in your experience, once a GM, a DP says, I know I have a problem, how much of a commitment do I need to make, and how long will it take me to kind of figure out where I am? You have any kind of best practices that you would talk about in terms of the people you've worked with, and how long does it take for you to work with them to kind of have them say, "Oh my gosh, I've been missing the boat now for quite a while. I really need Lotpop to help me on an ongoing basis"?
That's a great question, Dennis, and it really it really boils down to what you mentioned, is the level of commitment. If a dealer recognizes that they do have some issues, and they have a level of commitment across their team, that can happen pretty rapidly. Now, I will say a lot of it depends on what situation they're in when we start to look at and we work with one another. If it is a dealer that has a high percentage of aged inventory, and when I say aged, I'm referring to that 60 day and older inventory. So if a dealer doesn't have a aging policy, that could be an issue. Where we see that a lot, where we'll get a dealer and they have a high percentage of their inventory that is over 60 days. That's the hard work. That takes a longer time, because a lot of times that inventory that's sitting over 60 days old either has very little ROI, if any, or negative. And so those are hard decisions to make. So that could take a little bit longer. And again, it depends on how responsive that the dealer and his team are. Sometimes we'll have a dealer that sees the benefits of what we do. They'll sign up, and then maybe the managers don't completely buy into what the dealer was seeing. So that takes some time to massage that. So it really is kind of all over the map, depending on where the dealer is with his team. But if there is a mentality that it's all hands on deck, and we have a few of those dealers where, for I guess lack of better terminology, or my analogy is, everybody's pulling on the rope the same direction in this sort of tug of war that we're having with the market now. It really happens pretty fast, because Dennis, it really boils down to a daily commitment. Okay. I have to get in there and do the work every day. It's not something that I can wait on. I have to get in there and do the work every day. Our industry is rapidly changing so fast now. So for me to go a couple days and not look at what's happening on a deep drill down with my inventory, things can get away from me pretty quick.
On the brick and mortar versus the online, if you're going to be holistic about what you do, I assume you've got to take a close look at both of those and see how they're working together, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe just in wrapping up here a little bit, maybe some best practices like, where do you start? In other words, if you have to look at both of their dealerships, if you will, the online dealership and the brick and mortar, and there was a time when everybody said everybody's going to go online. They're all going to go to Carvana and so on. They don't want to come into the dealership, and that apparently is just not true. I mean,
right.
I think 70% of the buyers apparently still want to come into the dealership. So where do you dive in?
Well, you make a great point. Let me address that real quick. I still believe that people want to do business with people, right? So I do believe people like that personal contact, right? So where we dig in, a couple things. A lot of it is crossover. You're right. So a couple things that I would lead dealers with to look at. If you're looking at your inventory management tool and you're starting to see that bleed through in your inventory, and I mentioned 60 days earlier, Dennis, we really start in our software, we start tagging that inventory once it hits 46 days. We want dealers to understand once it hits 46 days, I really have to start recognizing that and preventing that bleed through. So the first area I would have dealers look at is if you have a high percentage of inventory over 60 days. And when I say high percentage, what we measure to is anything over 10%. So anything over 10% in your day plus inventory. Or if you have over 25% in your middle bucket inventory. So that would be that 31 to 60 day inventory. What you'll want to do is you'll want to focus on that middle bucket inventory. Here's what happens a lot of times. And I was a victim of this. When I was running dealerships, I always felt like you had to stock 250 vehicles to sell 150. Lotpop taught me differently, that you don't have to do that. You can sell 200 vehicles on 125 or 150 in stock. But one of the things that I'd learned is if you have a high percentage of aged, if you have high middle bucket inventory, don't consistently work your aged inventory, because what happens is when you're focused on the age and you have a high percentage, what will happen is you may sell 5 of those out of your 61 day plus today, and then tonight 5 more will drop in. So in essence, you're kind of chasing your tail there. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to focus on that 31 to 60 day inventory, and you're going to want to really start to move that inventory. If you have a high percentage, over 10% in your 61 day plus, you want to focus on having 20% of your investment or less in your 31 to 60 or your middle bucket inventory. If I can get that to 20% or less, that's going to cut off the flow into my 61 day plus. So once I can cut that flow off into that 61 day plus, now what I can do is it will enable me, and then obviously selling out of my middle bucket to push that down to 20%. Now I can start reloading my fresh inventory, right? And as I reload my fresh, I'm going to speed up my volume out of my fresh, which is going to bring my gross back up, because if I've got too much aged, it's eating away at my gross. So if I can start moving that middle bucket, it'll allow me to push that inventory, a new inventory, into my fresh and start speeding that up, start building my gross, and then I can refocus my attention on that aged inventory. So what I want to do is speed my inventory up, start making more gross, then I can refocus my attention on the age. So that would be for your bricks and mortar, right? Really working that inventory. Yep. On your online store, one is how am I working my leads? So you really want to bring your inventory managers, your sales managers in a vertical with your BDC or your salespeople that are working your leads, to make sure that we're working those fresh leads and looking at it from a perspective of where are my needs in my inventory. So I mentioned the dealer that has a high percentage of age. So if I look at my inventory management tool, and any inventory management tool, you can go back and pull your sold data. So I would go back and pull my last 2 weeks, my last 14 days of sold data, and compare that to my current inventory. Okay. Now, if I look at those as a dealer and I realize that in the last 2 weeks, I'm underselling my intermediate SUVs. So maybe I have 30 intermediate SUVs in stock, and in the last 2 weeks, I've only sold 10. So that means if I keep that same pace in a 4-week period in a month, I'm going to sell 20. I have 30 in stock. I'm underselling by 10 units. Well, that's where I would go into my online dealership and look for any leads that are on my intermediate SUVs, and let's work on those, right? Because I got to speed those intermediate SUVs up, right? And then in combination with that, I want to look at my marketing on my online store, right? I want to make sure that how do my photos look? Do I have any blurry or bad photos? One tip I would give dealers is, do I have the paper floor mats sitting in the photo of that vehicle online? And the dealer might say, well, why is that a big deal? My question is, where do customers typically see those paper floor mats being put in their car? Typically in the service department, right? So if I'm a customer looking online, I see that paper floor mat, I may like that car, but there may be a question in my mind. I like it, but it looks like it's still in service, and that may cause me to move away from that vehicle. Now, as a dealer, I would never know that. Customer looks at my car, they move away. So what we always want to tell dealers is anything that I think could potentially cause a customer to bounce away from my website, I want to remove that out of my marketing online, right? I want to get rid of that. If it's a blurry photo, if it's a bad photo, if it has a reflection of the photographer in there. So I just want to go in and make sure that my photos and then my descriptions, do I have all my tagging right in my descriptions, my meta tagging? Am I getting, if that vehicle has navigation on it, am I using navigation / nav / GPS so that if a customer is searching organically, is my vehicle popping up? Because some customers will search by navigation. Some will search by GPS, which actually that's the highest amount of search in those three, and some search by nav. So really, and again, when I reference back to the beginning of our conversation, when we started talking, I mentioned the small stuff, right? The everyday stuff. This is the kind of stuff that it's taking now, right? Because customers are shopping longer now. So I want to make sure every day I have nothing slipping through the cracks, and my photos and my descriptions. How long is it taking me to get that vehicle online? Sometimes we just find it's a feed issue, right? We've got a vehicle that's 20 days old and it hasn't been online for 5 days because the feed broke somewhere. So just looking at all those things, making sure that if I'm spending an enormous amount of effort on my bricks and mortar lot, which a lot of dealers do, rightly so, right? I want it, I still am a strong believer that when customers pull into your dealership, they get an overall feeling about that store based on how that store presents itself, right? It's the same way online, right? And I want those two to match. Because if we believe the statistics, and I have no reason not to believe them, that the average customer is spending somewhere between 14 and 16 hours online researching inventory, right? Then they're building a perception in their mind of what that experience is going to be like when I visit that dealer. So as a dealer, I want to make sure that that experience matches. So what I'm building online is going to be what they receive when they get to my store. That vehicle looks the way they've built it up. So all those things have to match, and that just takes an enormous amount of work daily to make that happen.
Well, one final question here from asking you what you see. You think the word margin compression is gotten back on the DP and the GM's top of mind yet, or do you think that's still they're still trying to figure out what to do next?
That's a great question. from what I'm seeing, I feel like that there's still a little bit of hesitation there, and
Okay.
that's kind of where I was referring to. Is I think dealers are seeing it, but because of that amount of success that we've had over those in our industry over
Yep.
those last year and a half to 2 years, I think making that shift is a hard one for them, and really that's where that when you mentioned margin compression, really that's when that happens is as you're if you've been holding out because customers have been coming later in the cycle and paying you the money for the car because of what's happened the last 2 years, we really are starting to see that shift. We look at tons of data points at Lotpop, and our CEO Jason Rice has been talking about that for quite some time. That we're seeing that shift behind the scenes. Unfortunately, the retail market typically takes in an average of 60 days to really catch up to what's going on, and so you're starting to see some of that right now. And where that margin compression starts to happen is as you're letting your inventory sit and not selling it and it's aging out, your cost of market
Sure.
goes up. That's where you get that compression at. So yes, I think there's still a hesitation there. And I think that dealers need to really recognize and be proactive in that area so we
Good
don't have to
advice.
talk about margin compression. Yeah.
Yeah, good advice. So that's probably going to take care of itself, but we're there to help them get ahead of that. Hey, I
Absolutely.
really appreciate your time, John. I'm so grateful for having a relationship with Lotpop and having known you guys for thick and thin and gone through things, and I'm really thrilled to hear how you're doing. And so I appreciate your time and your insights, and hope we'll be able to kind of catch up with you down line, maybe after NADA, and kind of see how things are going in the next cycle of this business. So thank you for your time, and appreciate your thoughts, and letting our listeners know kind of what Lotpop brings to the business case here.
Dennis, listen, it's truly my pleasure, and the feeling is very mutual about the folks at Rapid Recon. You guys have been tremendous folks to us, and I think what I love about both our companies is I think we really take the viewpoint that it really is about the dealer, and we want to give back, and these things that we see out there, we really want to help the dealer see, so that they can truly have an effect on their businesses. So no, I truly appreciate the opportunity and to speak with you today, and nothing but success for you guys, and thanks for having me very much.
Great, and same to you, and all of your folks at Lotpop and Jason and the whole team. So thank you for your time, and I'm sure we'll see you soon, if not before at NADA.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.